Hi, this is Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. So, a few of you asked me to put together a video on distance healing and Reiki. So, here's our attempt at doing that. I've done a lot of distance healing over my lifetime thus far. I'm trying to think of when was the first time I did something like that. I'm not entirely sure when I first discovered that you could send people energy at a distance from afar. It could have been after reading Dion Fortune's book, Psychic Self Defense, and her talking about that particular technique of um, standing between a cord that was attached to someone and then cutting it off and burning it out as a means to do healing in person in the astral. I did that in person once, which was different, but she was talking about mental plane, astral plane kind of activities. And so that's probably one of the first real imprints that I have of starting in that process. Up until then, of course, I was doing what I called psychic healing at the time, which was in person with people. And I did a whole video on that and what it was like and how I discovered it and so forth. And clearly, this is an ability I have had since I was small. So, healing has always been an important subject for me because of that. So, um, first off, without Reiki, you can do distance healing. You don't have to be a Reiki master in order to do distance healing. Reiki masters, or the second degree of Reiki, actually gives you the ability to send that specific energy distance to someone using the energetic stream that's attached to Reiki practitioners, um, and that kind of thing. So for me, one of the things that's important to know or understand, or how it works for the way I've done it, is I like the person who I'm doing the healing on know that I'm doing it if possible. I always ask for permission to do it. Sometimes I've gotten a personal item from them, so it's something that they've worn on a regular basis, so that I can use that as a focus point to send energy through to. All right, so when I went to Texas, which is video crossing spirits over and opening up a portal between the worlds, is about my trip to Texas and doing the psychic healing surgical stuff on one of the women I met there is another video that we've done about that in person. But because of going down there after I went back up to British Columbia, one of the women I met who was there in the room when I did the healing on Wyneth um, had a friend of hers or someone she knew who was a friend of the family, kind of thing, how word of mouth spreads, that was diagnosed with a brain tumor, an inoperable brain tumor. So that was one of the cases I worked on. And actually, I guess I moved from the valley to Terrace, British Columbia. It was after my son was gone. So it was just me and my daughter. And then I met a group of people. They wanted to learn how to do stuff. So I had like a group of 3 or 4 women that came over to my house on a semi-regular basis. And, we did stuff together, magic, ritual kind of things. And so when I got the request, then I asked for a piece of clothing from the woman and her name and her location. And that's one of the things that I require. I mean, if I'm going to be doing a specific person, I want to know where they are physically located on the planet, what their actual full name is, and like I said, if possible, have a personal item of theirs that has their energy signature. so as to make sure I'm going to the right place and working on the right person. I feel it focuses me and it makes things a lot more precise and specific. So I actually got all of that um, from my friend. They sent me the woman's bandana that she wore around her head, which I thought was a pretty good item to send to me because since it was a brain tumor, it had a very specific uh, connection to her ailment. And I got permission from the family and from her to do it. I don't think they knew exactly when I was doing it because this is not always a requirement. So my friends came over and I cast a circle in this case and went traveling on the mental plane. All of us went together. Everyone had an individual experience of what they saw and felt, which we then shared with each other after the fact, which was interesting just to see how different people's perceptions were of what happened. But I remember pretty clearly when I got there, the first thing that I encountered when I walked into the room where this woman was this very disturbing, horrific looking spirit standing next to her, which turned out to be her fear of death. I mean, it was very clear to me that that's what this was her fear of death. And I realized that in order for her to actually potentially be healed and get a healing, it was necessary for her to be able to face her fear of death. So I worked at it from that perspective in this case and talked to her higher self or spirit, not sure exactly how to describe it, but managed to get her to face this fear. And once she faced her fear of death and accepted it as a real possibility, the figure was transformed into this very angelic, bright spirit. And then I did the healing, trying to shrink the brain tumor and make it go away. And I think that the concept that I use when I'm doing this kind of thing is that life wants to improve and be healthy as sort of a baseline. It's kind of its template or whatever is to exist and to be well. And if you can give the person that template to follow, and the person is open and accepting to the idea and embraces that, then amazing things can happen in the body. And so that's what we did. And then when I was finished, we came back and we all shared our stories, and everyone else got something different, which I don't really remember what they all got compared to what I got because, that was my experience. So it was certainly interesting. And then not long after that, within a couple of weeks actually, I got a letter from the woman who had asked me to do this in the first place and was updated on this amazing piece of information that they had re-examined her tumor and discovered that it was shrinking, and the doctors didn't know why. It just was. And it continued to shrink until it just sort of disappeared and went away. So whatever people might think about what that means, that's what happened. And at that point, I'd already done enough in-person healing and seen actual instant results from people. Like, I had one woman that I did a healing on that had a radiation burn from having had breast cancer. And in the beginning of doing radiation therapy, they used much more radiation than they actually needed. Now they don't use anywhere near as much. And she actually had this open wound on her shoulder that broke open every day. She had to stretch her neck and tear the top of the skin open in order to keep it from shriveling up and grabbing her neck and keeping her immobilized. And when I met her, that was what her concern was that. And that was an in-person one, but it healed. I mean, she a few days after I worked on her, she was taking a shower and looking at herself in the steam and noticed something odd about her image, her reflection, and then saw that this was like completely healed, no longer, with the scabbing and whatnot on there. And it was like a skin graft, except it was her actual skin that came back, and she had feeling in it, so it was better than a skin graft. And she went to her doctor to tell him what I had done and to show him the results. And his response was, I guess the antibiotics we've had you on for the last 25 years finally started working. But maybe it was a coincidence. Seems highly unlikely considering that, the experience that we had when we were together, and then how instantly the effect happened right after. So when you have those kinds of in your face results, you get to the point where you don't doubt the possibility anymore. And so I'm not at a place where I doubt the potential. The ability for something like that to actually take place is genuine. Now, whether or not someone is ready to be healed is a whole different subject, and or whether or not it's in the cards, as it were, for them to be well is another issue. So another distance healing that I did was on my best friend's mother. She had cancer, and I did that again as a ritual. I've done a lot of distance healing in a ritual format before Reiki. And so, having a group of people together who are all focusing on the same goal, sending energy to the same person, casting the circle, raising the energy, and then directing that energy towards healing that particular person. But again, I knew her name, I knew where she was. She had a lot of different types of, she had cancer, abdominal cancer, I believe. And so we did our thing. I sent the energy. When I sent the energy, I got this instant hit that it wasn't going to work because it wasn't meant to be. And I was disappointed to get that feedback kind of thing from the universe, but there are things that are outside of our control, no matter how experienced we might be. And then when my friend called to tell me that she had gone into remission, I thought maybe I was wrong, because I'm not perfect. And sometimes I get impressions and interpret them inaccurately or incorrectly or whatever. It turned out I wasn't wrong, but she did get several years of remission out of what we did that allowed her and her daughter to process things that may have needed to be, processed and so forth. And so that was a gift in and of itself, that she was able to get better for even that period of time and move through the rest of the process before she passed on to the other side. And so that's the thing about doing healing, that you have to learn how to accept, even though we may be extremely powerful and very aware, magical beings, and trust our own abilities. The universe is vast, and there are many reasons why something might happen that we might not like. That's beyond our control. And so that being ready to heal, or being the right thing to heal, so there's always that unknown factor whenever you're sending someone healing energy. Even if they consciously believe that it's what they want and they're willing to accept it and so forth, the subconscious is very strong. And if there is something that needs to change in their subconscious in order for it to be possible, if it hasn't changed, no matter how many healings they get, it may not work. That's an unfortunate reality about living in a physical universe. So, one of the things, like whenever I do distance healing at this point, the last one I did was fairly recent. One of you sent me in a request to send some Reiki energy to them. And, I got their name, I got their location, and we made a time for them to be conscious and receptive to the healing. Because my belief is that probably gives it the best chance to actually succeed. And so we did that. And she asked me how long it would take, and I said about a half an hour, because that's about as long as I can maintain that kind of um, clarity and concentration of sending energy and receptivity so that I can feel whatever it is that feedback I might be getting, imagery and so forth. And more than that, then I'm going to weaken myself, or I'm going to undo what I've succeeded in doing potentially. And in that case, I used Reiki as an assist. I didn't do a circle casting, didn't have a group of people. That was just me by myself. And so when it comes to Reiki, we've talked briefly about Reiki here and there. And Reiki is like a very specific kind of healing energy system that is sort of like an initiatory system, in that there are these 28 angels, spirit beings, or whatever, who have agreed to lend their healing energy to anyone who has been taught and given the specific symbols that they have made a commitment to acknowledging. So as a psychic healer for many, many years, when we went in for our first Reiki level attunement or what have you, it was pretty simple. I mean, there wasn't really much that they had to do, and I was very aware of their energy. It was sort of like, oh yeah, we know you, and I actually had the physical sensation of some of them touching me during that process, which I felt was a pretty positive indication that it was the right thing. So, and in that first level, you're given the pathways, the connection to those specific beings, and then you practice on yourself and on people that you have in front of you, people you can touch. Some Reiki practitioners actually don't touch people at all. They just hold their hands above and move and just use the energy. And it can be used that way. But since I'm a massage therapist and have been one for many, many years, I don't see the necessity of not touching the body and of connecting with it. So then the second attunement is the one that gives you the connection to the distance healing part of it, where you can use that to access healing energy anywhere and send it to anyone that you choose to. So it's like the process of doing that, it still requires focus, centeredness, groundedness, concentration, self-awareness, clearing the mind of other things so that the impressions that you get are just from what you're doing. So then way you can like with the last one that I just recently did, I had certain visions and impressions, and then when I talked to her later, found out that I was getting a lot of the exact information of what was happening in her body, which is always good to have that verification that what you're doing is having an effect, and that she had a great effect from it at the time. I don't know how long it lasted. I haven't heard from her since. But if she's listening to this episode, feel free to send me a message and let me know. Because sometimes you don't know how long these things will continue? Like what is it that's exactly going on? Is there some kind of unknown karmic related process that got started 30 years ago that needs to have some completion in order to fix that state of acceptance or um, expectation of things not working or whatever it might be? Because some people are definitely um, on an unconscious level feeling they need to be and stay ill in order, in some cases, to continue to exist at all. That somehow being sick is part of their survival package. Um, I met a woman as a massage therapist who had that kind of thing happening to her, where she was being brutally beaten by a spouse, and then she got into a horrific car accident, and the car accident made her so incredibly fragile, and Ian's outside the window. That's the banging you might hear. So incredibly fragile physically that he stopped harming her. So when she came to see me and started to feel better, there was a definite anxiety thing going on in her mind that now that she was feeling better, she was going to end up being brutalized again. And so she went out and injured herself to stop it from continuing in that direction, which was very frustrating for me, of course, as both a massage therapist and a healer, and wanting her to do well. But, it's like there's only so much you can do. And I think that this sort of brings up the subject of when people are trying to do large workings and like affect a huge number of people, like the recent thing going on in Ukraine, where some people are doing magical ceremonies to try and, make this come to a conclusion. It doesn't seem to be working. Of course, it could be working. It just might take longer to manifest on the physical plane than we would like. But still, affecting one individual and the path that they're on with their willingness to change is a much easier thing to do than it is to affect like 1 million people or even 20 people. I mean, it's just, it takes a lot of the potential circumstantial changes and switches and whatnot out of the equation when you lessen the number of people you're trying to actually affect. So, like the distance thing that I did with my friend in Los Angeles, who was on the verge of committing suicide, and I could only speak to her higher self and try and get through on that level and hope that it was going to trickle itself down into her physical life and so forth through her delusions, where she thought that her boyfriend was being held hostage by demons, and if she killed herself they would let him go and he would be able to live. She was doing a self-sacrifice kind of mental gymnastics thing. But I did not know. And of course, it didn't help that then she vanished from Facebook for like 6 months and no one had heard from her and no one knew if she was dead or alive until she finally popped back up and apparently had taken herself to a facility, a treatment program, and put herself into it and gotten off of all the stuff they put her on and then got on stuff that actually worked for her particular situation. And she's now stable, and has been stable. I think that was maybe 20 years ago that I did that. And so it can certainly have these long-lasting effects. I mean, it's not a reason not to try, I guess. And if you're doing it from that center place where what you're offering is healing energy for the body and the spirit of the person to use if they choose to or not, I don't think that you are collecting any karmic debt from that. Like, if it doesn't work, it's not like you are responsible for it. Sometimes things are just so strange. When I was in Texas, I was asked to do a healing on a very genetically abnormal child. I mean, we're talking no ears, nose not there, eyes in the wrong place, bulbous head, a few hairs sticking out, something that would appear to be a caricature of a person. And and when I was doing the healing, this was in person, I got the very distinct impression, like, was very strong, that the spirit of this child was staying until the woman got pregnant again, at which point she would leave this body that wasn't working and pass away and go into the new body that was going to be better. But I really didn't think it was a good idea for me to tell the woman that. I didn't know what that might do to her psychologically. Like, would she then think that it was her fault that she got pregnant again and she killed her child in the process? And, you know, who knows, she may have gone through some of that anyway, just because that's a very intense, emotional, traumatic kind of event to have a child and and then, you know, try and keep it alive and have it pass and have another one. So yeah. And indeed, that's what happened. I heard back later that she got pregnant again, and the little girl died uh, before she was born again into a better body. But would that really comfort the woman? People's personal relationship with the universe is just that, extremely personal, and not really prone to manipulation on the part of someone else in order to make it work better in their head, kind of thing. It's like whatever it is that they're dealing with and whatever it is that they have in their head, they have to figure out exactly how they're going to deal with that. So one of the other ways I've done distance healing is with Poppets. I recently did that for a friend. She had a very close family member who was extremely ill and going through a lot of different cancer treatments and things, and was very depressed and was getting ready to, like, leave, either on purpose or because it was the only option that was left for the body. And so I built a poppet, a healing poppet. And if you're going to do a poppet, poppets are actually pretty productive and easy to use. They don't have to be for nefarious purposes. In fact, in general, in the past, poppets were used for healing. That was their main reason for being, was to help somebody when they were going through a rough time. But, you know, just make a doll figure, like human-ish shaped. If you have personal items of theirs, you put them in. In this case, I didn't have an item of his, but I had his name, so I wrote his name on the outside of the poppet, and then stuffed it with herbs for healing and so forth. I can't remember what I used at this point, but I used stuff that made sense at the time for what was going on. I put some crystals in there. I'm pretty sure I put in a quartz crystal and maybe a rose quartz, and I can't remember what else I put in there. It's like every one is like individual. It's not like a formula you just follow, but you have to, like, you know, be in it in the moment. And then I did a ritual, cast a circle, charged it up, connected it through the worlds. It's like, you know, between the worlds, these two things are the same. This is a representation of that. What happens to this, what energy I put in this, directly affects that. And that's how that kind of magic works, is that, you know, you have that strong psychic connection, energetic connection between the two items. And you can do that not just with a poppet, you can do that with a stone that you might have that belongs to them, and use that as a sort of a touchstone connection to the person to send them energy. You can do candle magic for the same thing, where you can write on the candle the healing that you want to have in the name of the person that you're doing it for. And then you have that focus, energetic focus, which people call intent, but isn't really the right word for that, as someone pointed out today. And I agree. It's an energetic focus concentration that you're putting into the item, charging it up for the purpose. And that's what gives the universe the instructions. So what you're doing is you're creating a set of instructions on an energetic plane that says, here's what this is represents, this is who this is, and then this is what I want to give them on an energy level to help heal them or positively affect them or whatever. This is an item I'm putting in order to charge all that stuff up. This is, I'm adding these specific herbs in order to help with this particular problem. And so, it's like the process of creating it is an active ritual of magic. Making an item like that for that purpose is the beginning of the spell, if you want to call it a spell. And that's like, all of those things help to align our energy along a pathway to focus this specific thing for this specific purpose for this specific person. So it's not any kind of a generalized, like, stop a war, heal a country. It's very individual. And because of that, more powerful, because it's like, yeah. So, so that's another method you can use for distance healing is poppets. And then, of course, you can use them for yourself if you're going through a hard time and you need some emotional and physical support for what you're going through. You can build a poppet for you. I mean, it's like all of these things are kind of like skeletons of an idea that then you are filling in the skeleton with the substance of what you want it to accomplish. And that's how magic works. It's a precise language between you and the universe, and telling the universe where exactly you want this energy you're sending out to go, and then what you want this energy to do, and who's going to get it and why, that sort of thing. I've talked about free will and getting permission a lot because I think that's very important, because for one, if the person gives active permission for it, then they're telling their own subconscious that, hey, I'm ready for this, I'm going to accept this, I'm going to open myself up to this, I'm going to allow myself to experience this, and then again, much more likely for it to actually work. So yeah, you can think about, the video I did on healing. Some of the other videos I've done on healing can give you ideas of what to do, and then doing it through distance, here's some ideas of how to do it. But remember, limitations is a part of the universe as well. Everything has its limits. So like I said, I think the most effective healing spells and sending healing energy is going to be the very specific individuals who need it. When you do, like the Amethyst Crystal Web Project we're doing is a generalized kind of energy that some people can access if they discover it or are open to the energy that's there that might assist them in everything else that they're doing, but it's not precision magic like this is that we're talking about. Yeah. So some people think you can do Reiki without actually being attuned, going through the attunements. You can certainly send healing energy without being a Reiki practitioner or a Reiki master. You don't need to use those specific energies in order to send healing. If you're just doing it on your own, it's not Reiki. Reiki is a specific practice, kind of like Wicca is a specific set of practices and a religion in the larger umbrella of witchcraft. Reiki is a specific set of practices in the larger umbrella of healing modalities and distance healing potential, psychic healing, and whatnot. And so, I try to be as precise as I can in my definitions of words so that I'm not being misunderstood about what I mean. But hey, if you have a question about what I mean by what I say, it's always okay to ask me for clarification. And because, we're all coming from different experiences, different biases, different cultural conditioning, and all that stuff changes how we perceive words and what we get out of words. So that's my attempt. So hopefully this is going to be helpful for people who are wanting to do more distance healing. As an aside, I am not a kind of practitioner that can just hear somebody's name. It's like pagan groups, Christian groups, they all do the same thing. Someone pops up on Facebook and says, my uncle's in the hospital, please send him some energy. And everyone goes like, energy sent. And I'm like, who's your uncle? What's your uncle's name? Where is your uncle located? What country? What city? What state? I mean, what hospital? Like, how many people might have his name? I need more specifics. So, I mean, I'm just one of those people. It's like, if I'm going to do it, I want to actually get it where it's supposed to be going or not bother. So, if you ask me to send healing energy, I'm going to ask you for those questions, which we just did actually a long distance healing for someone else, not the one I was talking about before, where I sent energy to someone in the hospital with their name and permission. So, yeah, I guess that's good enough. It's going to be funny when I tell Ian he was right outside the window opening up the shed to get things for the yard. Anyway, entertaining. Life is like that. So, hope you are all having a wonderful week, and I guess we'll see you in a couple of days. This is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. Blessed be.